Professor Gard W. Otis drops by. This is fascinating. Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. So we have giant hornets that are crawling out of the woodwork, or out of the hives now in the Pacific Northwest. They're being called murder hornets. I got an email. Honest to God, I actually got this email. It's got a picture of one of these hornets, and it says, "Murder hornets are a false flag operation by the deep state to distract from the cabal of libtards and Democrats trying to cover up the creation of a biological weapon developed in Wuhan, China, dispersed by chemtrails to turn everyone into gay, child-molesting pizza gators who will outlaw the Second Amendment and steal our guns." Right. Well, back in the day at MSU, I had a professor who was an entomologist and he was a rather humorless fellow. He used to get very, very upset whenever I would refer to insects as bugs. But I love entomologists, and one of them is on the line with us right now, Professor Gard W. Otis, who's an adjunct professor of behavioral ecology and agriculture at the School of Environmental Sciences in Ontario, Canada, at the University of Guelph. And Guelph, Gulf. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. Dr. Otis's Twitter handle is UOFG, and the website is uoguelph.ca/SES. Dr. Otis, welcome to the program.
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me on.
So I'm guessing that these giant hornets that are referred to in the popular press as murder hornets, I know you have an actual name for them, a real name, are an invasive species, but B, probably not something we're going to be able to get rid of. Where are we at with this? Who are these bugs and where did they come from?
Well, they clearly must be from the deep state, and they came out of a lab in China, and they're undoubtedly here to destroy our entire society. And with that little spoof there, after your lead-in comment,
thank you, sir.
They are.
My email was right.
What's that?
My email, the guy who sent me this email was right.
I would love to have that email because that's a classic. I love it.
I will forward it to you.
Yeah, so these are really large hornets. There are two species, actually, that are virtually identical in what they look like, in their behavior, and pretty much everything they do. One of those species, is the more northern one, is the one that was detected last fall out in Washington State, very close to the Canadian border, and also in British Columbia, just into Canada. There was one colony destroyed in Vancouver Island, which clearly must be a separate introduction from the mainland sites. And there was a beekeeper who had a colony that got chopped to death by hornets late in the year in Washington State near Bellingham, which also indicates there was a separate colony there to have that effect. So they're there. They're not yet common. We're not even sure they're yet fully established. And the two species together, I refer to them as giant because they're huge, 2 inches long. Asian, because they come from Asia. Hornets, because they are a group of insects referred to as hornets.
So, number one, first of all, if they came from Asia, they were there in Asia for a while. How many people, what part of Asia did they come from? How many people typically die from contact with them? How have they altered the ecosphere, as it were, or the local, terrain? Biological terrain there that might inform us how they might alter things here. How do people alter their behavior to avoid being stung by these things? I understand they can kill a person. If a bunch of them sting you, it kills you. If with a single one can kill a small animal like a mouse. So what do we know about these things that? Or what do you know about them? Scientists know about them that we should know about them, particularly those of us in the Pacific Northwest who might encounter them. And then my follow-up question would be, how fast will it take for them to spread across the rest of the United States?
That was a lot of questions at once.
Yeah, sorry.
So perhaps you visited Asia in one of your travels. I don't know, but I'm sure many of your listeners have traveled to Asia. And I will bet 100% that you never got any warnings to watch out for giant Asian hornets. They are not something that the average person out and about, even in Asia and China and Japan and Vietnam and even down to Singapore, where they encounters between people out and about doing normal activities would interact with them in a way that would get them stung. They are very passive when they're away from their nests or away from a colony of bees they might have attacked and taken over. So, on general, they're not all that scary. You ask so many questions there at once. I get lost with that.
Well, the subset of that, I suppose,
they are in Washington State, and one of your questions was, what's the likelihood they'll get out of there, like continue to colonize across North America? The species that's there now is the more cold-adapted species, as I mentioned briefly. I don't know exactly where it's from. To do that, you need to have samples from Asia that you can type, like do the DNA genetic typing, and then compare your samples from North America. And I don't think we have enough samples from Asia to even begin to meaningfully do that yet. So we don't know exactly what part of Asia they were from. We don't know if they're in their preferred habitat right now, or if they're really in sort of a marginal habitat compared to where they back across the ocean. So the first thing they have to do is they have to successfully colonize and actually produce a sustaining population. And it's amazing how many insects and plants make it here but then die out and never actually establish populations. It happens all the time. So that has to happen first, and there's going to be an army of people out there, including citizen scientists, putting up traps for these things they're going to monitor to try to figure out where they are, how common they are, get the samples, do the DNA analysis to figure out how genetically diverse they are, because that has a big impact on whether they can adapt to the new situation. And by the end of a year from now, we'll have a much better idea, I think, what's going on. And then they're on the west side of the mountains, and there's high mountains basically from British Columbia all the way down into Southern California almost. So, and they're not going to make it around across the desert. So the way they're going to get across the mountains is probably the same way they got to western North America in the first place, which is through wintering queens. So the queens, the colonies at the end of the season, they get fairly large. They can get up to like 500 to 1,000 hornets in a single nest. They're very impressive colonies. And they then switch over and produce a batch of new queens, maybe 50 or 100 queens per colony, per nest, and a group of males. They mate, and then those mated queens go off and overwinter. And when they're overwintering, there's about a 5-month period there where they could be in packing material or a load of lumber or something like that, and they could get shipped across the country. So I'm not going to say they're not somewhere else in the eastern part of the North America, but I would say the chances of it are extremely, extremely low at this point in time.
Yeah, most of our timber seems to be moving from the West Coast to Asia right now, where they, make it into furniture and
well, there's lots of other goods that they could end up in a rail car or something that they could come across the country with. So, but it's going to be a random thing, and people want to know, like, well, when do I expect them? It's like, well, when do you expect to win the lottery? Like, could happen tomorrow. Buy your ticket, but it's not likely.
We have just a half a minute till we're going to hit a hard break I can't control here. How are they changing the ecology? I mean, they seem to like to eat bees. Are our pollinators at risk?
Probably not. They really like to focus when the colonies get large toward the end of the summer. They like to focus big sources of food like honeybee colonies. And when they do that, they actually recruit a bunch of females, a bunch of worker wasps to the nest, and then they attack en masse, and our bees just literally have no defenses against them, so they get chopped up, and then the wasps haul all the baby bees, the larvae, and the pupae back to their own colony to feed them for the next couple of weeks.